encapsulated what Amy was talking about. The Syrian government is bombing the heck out of its own people and has been for a long time. But the UN, they're more worried about the actions of another country. You guessed it, Israel. From January 2011 until now, Israel has been blamed for the deaths of 163 Palestinians. Syria, well, they've apparently killed 17,000 civilians. What do you think the UN Human Rights Council is doing on this file? Well, they've passed 8 resolutions at the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly against Syria, but 33 against Israel. Joining me now is journalist Claudia Rosett. She has covered the Tiananmen Square protest, uncovered the UN oil for food scandal while writing for the Wall Street Journal, and is a frequent critic of the UN. Claudia, that just must have you shaking your head. I know you're not surprised, but it still must leave you shaking your head when you see the disproportionate response Israel to Syria.
Oh, it is the UN as usual. Let me just add to your introduction. I'm now the journalist in residence with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And what you are saying is exactly the way the UN functions. You know, what Ami just said is exactly right. Down is up and up is down. It's a function, actually, of how it's put together, of how it's designed.
Well, which brings me to my next question. Is there any hope for reforming? I keep calling for Canada to leave the United Nations because I think that's the only thing. If a country like Canada were to say, you know what, you guys are a rogues gallery, you're a bunch of thugs, you're corrupt, we're pulling out, that might make them wake up enough to reform. But barring something like that, I don't see that they could reform. You?
Really tough. Canada doing something like that would be a major statement. You know, Canada gets a lot of respect, and at the moment has been one of the few heroes on the scene with these crazy things that go on at the UN. But reforming, look, the basic problem here is that the UN is a collective. It's a group of 193 member states, and the majority of them are not fully democratic states. In fact, there's a significant number that are serious tyrannies, terrible rogue states, North Korea, Iran, Syria. And they have not only voices, these states tend to band together there. You get lobbying blocs like the Organization of the Islamic Conference, which pull together to promote very bad things. And that's one of the reasons that they're willing to give a pass to the government of Syria. You know, Russia and China have been standing shoulder to shoulder at the Security Council saying, no, nothing is going to interfere with Bashar Assad's government in Syria. And at the same time, there's a great tendency to then gang up on a common enemy, and guess who?
That would be Israel. You mentioned that Canada, sorry.
I should correct myself. Israel is not actually their enemy. They designate a common enemy. Let me be really clear on that.
Yeah, well, it's who they view as their enemy. It's who they view and who they want to pick on. Well, there's a great YouTube video that describes how all this came together, and we've posted it online before. It describes Israel as the little Satan to the America's great Satan, and they band together to try and pick on both of those countries. Canada, you know, well, we're just in the middle somewhere on this. But you're right. The country has been moving in a direction that has gained respect, especially under the Harper government. We get our foreign affairs bureaucrats, retired bureaucrats, criticizing what the Harper government's doing. But they've been able to get other countries to stand up and walk out on people like Ahmadinejad from Iran. Been able to get other countries to say, you know what, having these human rights abusers on the Human Rights Council is a bad thing. So I think that that's been a step in the right direction. And as much as I criticize the Harper government for going along to get along sometimes and some of our bureaucrats making mistakes, I think they've done a fair job. So how big of a bombshell would it be at UN headquarters? And you're in New York, so you might hear the repercussions if this were to happen. Canada pulls out and says, we're not going to stand by anymore and watch you guys denounce Israel and give Syria a pass. How big would the repercussions be on something like that?
Oh, that would be absolutely huge, I think. Look, Canada had these old bureaucrats you're talking about produced a bureaucracy that fed off the UN for years. You know, people like Maurice Strong, Louise Frechette, who were high in the UN ranks and, frankly, promoted absolutely terrible things. You know, Louise Frechette was part of the, to put it generously, amazing ineptitude with which Kofi Annan's management of the UN brought us the oil for food scandal. Maurice Strong, while denying any wrongdoing, pocketed a check for almost $1 million from the government of Baghdad while he was busy reforming the UN structure for Kofi Annan. You know, it goes on and on. And Canada has turned around in recent years and is now actually doing things that are not only defensible but morally admirable. It's a very rare player that way. Canada is an important country in the UN pantheon. If Canada were to pull out, that would signal that something truly substantial was in the making as far as what do we do about the enormous sinkhole, you know, dictator-loving, corruption-prone mess that the United Nations has become. It would be huge.
All right, Claudia, thanks so much for joining us today. There you have it, words from a woman that has seen up close